Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Steven Spielberg's Hook from 1991. Yes, here we are back again with a Spielberg review, and yes, to clear this up, yes, I'm wearing a cap. Will be most of my videos now. Yes, various different caps and stuff, and of course, Spielberg being one of my very, very favourite directors. Along with Stanley Kubrick, my favourite, of course, of all time. So, and Jurassic Park, is one of my favourites. Of course, one of my favourite films in general. So, yeah, it's very fitting as well. That it's Hook, so it's a Spielberg review. But yes, Hook is a film. We must say that I've never really talked about, on my channel. A lot of people probably wondering, what does he think of Hook? I've done quite a few Spielberg reviews now, but Hook is not a film that I've really talked about, and there's a number of reasons for that. But one of the reasons really being that it's not a film I've really seen too many times. Maybe this is my third watch really all the way through. I must say, I only saw it really once as a kid all the way through. I never really rewatched it. I wasn't a big fan in all honesty, and I know it's a very controversial one. This film, very very hated at times, and a lot of people, there's a cult following for this. It's quite popular overall, fans and stuff. But critics, this has got a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is the lowest Spielberg, even lower than 1941, which we'll get to that film. But yeah, I think very interesting. Of course, story mainly being that Peter is older, and he's forced to look back and remember being younger and stuff, and his kids are taken, and in this film they're taken by Captain Hook, played by Dustin Hoffman, and yes, you've got this whole story of him going to Neverland, and of course to get the kids back and remembering and becoming completely returning to his childlike self, you could say, and it deals with all these films. It's basically a very ideal setup for Spielberg, greatness, really. I think this film, in terms of just the start, this is kind of like a thing you'd expect to be one of the best family films, really. But I don't quite think it is. But yeah, this film, there's a lot of people that hate it. Really, really hate this film, and a lot of people that do love it as well. So it's very interesting. I'm kind of in between. I think just on this rewatch again, my third viewing only. So I guess understandable, but yeah, I do like it a little bit more than my other watches. But I do definitely really like these sequences. Well, particularly the first half an hour before Tinkerbell comes into it, but and the final act actually, and there's moments throughout that are very magical actually, and stuff. But yeah, I think Hook it's a decent film. It's not one of his best, I must say, personally for me. I can understand if people love the film. I think actually at times I definitely loved moments. Early on, this first 30 minutes is really, really good stuff. Very moving actually at times, and very just feel good, and very investing, very focused on what it's trying to say. And I think one of the things, Spielberg of course has addressed basically that this is a film that gives him a headache kind of thing, and he's not too fond of it. He's already said that many times, I think. We must say that, and that's interesting. Although again, it doesn't discount fans, or people watching, as a viewer to love the film. It's two different things. But it's really interesting from his point. He doesn't think too much of this compared to his other works, really. You could say, but yes, mainly he says once he gets to Neverland, and I do think it takes a dip. Really, the first 30 minutes for me is the best of the film, and basically just kind of it's the stuff that really it does work quite well, certainly very very well, and as I say, it's kind of a great Spielberg setup. All the materials here, and I think the first act is proof, that it could have followed through consistently. That's the thing, this film, I don't think is very consistent, to be honest, and it's something that it's certainly it's a film that kind of just goes off at times, especially in the middle of the film. Very messy, I feel at times, and quite flat, bloated, and just not really at times moving forward with the narrative, the characters, and there's definitely some scenes in the middle, and once he arrived, after the kind of first arrival on the ship to Neverland, and once he kind of goes off and stuff, kind of he's at the table and stuff. That's when it it is very it is kind of flat at times, and very very much kind of messy, and going too many places, I feel, and kind of, I will say, a bit of a mess about it seems. It just feels like that. It's not too cohesive and stuff, and it's just very over the top. Obviously, this film, we must say, it is pretty insane, this film, and I think Spielberg is one of the directors who can go quite far in terms of tone and stuff, but this is kind of pushing it at times. In the middle of the film, and just the overall, some of these scenes, they're very much too much. I think a bit lack of control. I think just a bit too much, and a bit gross out, we must say. The kind of the food stuff is a bit much for me, and just on this occasion, and I just think a lot of the kind of the humor and stuff is just it's just a bit too loud in many ways. It's kind of, it's just lack a bit of control here, and just kind of I was just so invested actually in the first 30 minutes, and it did take a bit of a dive, after the ship sort of scene there. That was very good still at times, and certainly had its moments, but it does take a while to pick back up again. I think most of the middle portion of the film is definitely the weakest part, of the film. I will say that the final act, I feel, does pick up a lot. It's definitely just more entertaining. And it does bring the themes together more, in quite a impressive way. I think it's very warm, this ending to the film, and just the whole kind of aspect, the family sort of values, and of course, just the whole overall kind of the way the arc is, the character of Peter, remembering what it's like to be a kid and stuff, and the value of this, and to never kind of grow old, in many regards, and of course it is very, very pleasing in the end. It's just, and of course his son Jack, especially, that relationship there, and the way, of course, he does miss the baseball game, and stuff, at the beginning of the film, and the way it kind of comes together, and, it's just very, very pleasing, I feel, and just, yes, this whole kind of ending, it's, I don't think anything about this film, is subtle really too much, but it's, for what it is, this film, I think, is definitely, an effective ending, a very warm ending, and, it just definitely takes a while, a lot of the middle of the film, is definitely, it is quite unenjoyable at times, and kind of, I must say, it's quite exhausting, this film, at times. It just is a bit, for me, very much a kind of, film that does take a lot out of you, just because it's so much, it's so much excess, I feel, just even the production a little bit, and just a lot of the humour, and how loud it is, in this particular way, it's just a bit too much, and so I think the journey to get there is a bit rocky. That's what we'll say, with all respect. But I think the beginning and the final act, definitely stuff that I do like / really, really like. There is some magical moments in this film, and I just think the acting as well. Robin Williams, who for the record is one of my favourite actors, really. Certainly comic actors, and I think his best role there is Goodall Hunting. This is one of the best performances I've ever seen, and I think he's even better in a dramatic side. But Dustin Hoffman as well, I think he's one of the best actors. Just an absolute legend, and in this film, I think he's definitely enjoyable. It's, the way that Captain Hook is, written and stuff could have been better, I feel, definitely. And the performance, everything in this film, nothing really is subtle, I must say. But for what it is, it's definitely, it's definitely kind of effective in some of the performances. Bob Hoskins as well. It's no great performance, this, but it's very, very enjoyable. The campiness of it, and just the, the way it's very exaggerated and stuff. It's definitely enjoyable. There's nothing in this film really in these sequences that you can take too seriously, I feel, at least for me. But it's kind of a thing you can laugh at, and kind of definitely get a kind of enjoyment out of. And it's definitely very warm, and just kind of childlike. I guess that is the intention. I wouldn't say this is anything like E.T., for example, where it's kind of this. For the record, one of my very, very favourite films. But I think it's not a film that kind of perfectly blends, the kind of the childlike innocence with the kind of sophisticated levels of emotion, I feel, and just in terms of just cinema greatness, and kind of something that is truly for me anyway, emotional ET and stuff with the drama and everything. But also being very very innocent and childlike, kind of a family endeavor. But this film isn't quite like that. It's definitely much more not taken seriously in that sense, and not it's definitely missing some things I feel, and it's definitely a little bit disappointing. If I kind of compare it to some of these Spielberg just family films, I feel especially last century. This is the sort of thing that should have been. Well, just for me, I think I would have expected it on a personal level to be just more kind of something I connected to, or just consistently got more enjoyment out of. It's definitely has a lot of flaws for me, this one. But having said that, I don't quite get the full on hate that it gets too much. I mean, it's not for everyone, of course. It's definitely not a film that I love, and it has taken a bit to definitely. Well, I've never really hated this film or anything, but it's definitely something I like more now, a bit more, than kind of my couple of first watches. But having said that, it's a film I can understand on one hand how people would maybe not connect to as much, but 26%, it's definitely it's quite interesting to see that, and very something hard, quite a bit hard to understand, just with the critics and stuff. But there we go. It's just an opinion, of course. But yes, I think there's a lot to praise here. The music. Well, just thinking again, the music to the film is actually very very good, of course, because it's John Williams, and it's definitely a very magical feeling. And I think the way it's used, again, is not on the level of a lot of the films with Spielberg, but it's definitely in itself, very very pleasing score. Once again, moments of beauty, and just a very thrilling score and kind of magical feeling, and stuff. But yes, also the sets, is mostly on soundstage and stuff. But the sets, I think, are to praise. The kind of effort and stuff, the creativity that went into them, and it does. It's definitely quite layered at times. It's very impressive. The way it's very much interacted with, by a lot of the cast. But it's something that's a bit too much, I feel. At times it does maybe take over a little bit. It's a bit too much, again, a bit too much excess. Kind of feeling. This is more like this film is a bit more like theatre. I would say than film a lot of the time, which is fine. But on this occasion, I just think it's a bit too much. And certainly with the first act is a bit. It doesn't quite mesh perfectly. That's another thing. And it just. As I say, at times it's a bit of a mess around, I feel. But it's definitely an enjoyable film. I think. It's a high average. I think this film. We'll get to that soon. But I think the performances. Robin Williams, of course. Just being. I think very good in the film, mostly, and Dustin Hoffman is fine as well. Bob Hoskins very enjoyable, and Caroline Goodall. She's also in Schindler's List. Great in that, of course, and she is very good in the film. Unfortunately, a lot of the cast, like Maggie Smith and stuff, they're only in it at the beginning and the ending, really. But not that I expected that any different. But it's just something that it's kind of missed a lot of these characters and stuff, and the presence of them. But it does kind of wrap up some things there at the end. But it's definitely, of course, most of the film, as you would expect, though, obviously, is Neverland. It's just some of this is a bit disappointing, I must say, personally, and with all respect. But yes, I think overall, taking everything into account, it's definitely an average film, a high average. It nears into the good mark for me. It's not one of my favourite films. I'll be honest there, but again, it's definitely not one of the. It's not the worst Spielberg film by no means, by many miles. I know what that one is for me personally. We'll get to that, but I think it's quite something that he's made so many films, and none of them really, too many of them are legitimately bad films. I think he's just. There's always at least a kind of feeling you get from the magic feeling, and you do get that in this. It's definitely a film. While I think the sense of wonder is very much, it's not quite as believable. This one, I feel, as a lot of his family films. You know, he's kind of blockbusters. You know, of the last century, but you know, it does have this kind of magic feeling and kind of just charm to it. But the wonder and the actual sophistication to the emotions, you know, and the way it's just yeah, certain levels of, you know, maybe elevating these old films that are like this, emotional levels and spiritual levels. I don't think are here. You know, I think it's very much a lot more kind of dialed down in that sense, and it is much more of a just kind of all out, you know, crazy at times, a little bit gross out at times, I must say, with the food and stuff, as I've said, but you know, just a kind of family film that isn't really anything great in my opinion. But again, you know, I think it's an average film. I do like the film. I really like the first 30 minutes, and I think the ending came together. The last kind of 25 minutes in particular did come together really well at times, and yes, the ending, while very kind of basic, I feel is definitely enjoyable. It comes together fairly well, and yeah, I think I do like the film. Have to give it a 68%. Yeah, it's one of the lowest ones I've, you know, in terms of what I've reviewed, but you know, it's not the worst. It's not even, you know, in my top 3 least favourite Spielbergs for the ones I've seen, which isn't, of course, all of them. But you know, it's not one of my favourites either. I must be honest. I think, you know, in terms of what you would maybe look at it, you know, on paper and stuff, and hear, oh, he's making Spielberg, you know, the legend, of course, making you know, a Peter Pan film. You'd think, oh, it's going to be one of my favourite films again, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, it's just kind of in that sense, maybe a little bit disappointing, but that doesn't mean anything. You know, I think I'm not bashing on the film at all. I do like it. You know, I'm not giving it a kind of a 26, but yeah, that's quite a low score on Rotten Tomatoes. But yeah, it's a controversial film. I'm on the positive side. Definitely, I think it's a very enjoyable film at times. Other times it's a bit too much, and I think, as I say, the middle portion. Yeah, and you know, I think Tinkerbell in this film, until the very ending, really, is, I don't think is of any use in the film, and I didn't quite take to the Julia Roberts kind of performance. I must be honest. I think just the character really just in the way it's portrayed is a bit annoying. You know, just the way you know, she shows up constantly. Tinkerbell to kind of really doesn't add anything. Just kind of is an extra annoyance to the kind of already a bit too much for me. You know, the way that everything's, you know, kind of a lot of screaming in the film, and you know, kind of all out. You know, it's a film that doesn't hold back, and in that sense, there's a very high chance that some of the stuff will be a bit too much. I just think there's a little bit a lack of control at times, but you know, just I do think it's to praise this film, and it's definitely an enjoyable film. You know, it was quite touching at times, of course, but you know, I think as well, just considering the first 30 minutes, I think if it lived up to that, you know, in terms of my investment and connection, I would be saying, you know, it's a 80-something% film actually. You know, very good, but not quite there. But yeah, you know, it's a film that I like, and definitely a charming film, feel good film, and I do really love the whole kind of idea of the film. You know, kind of, you know, remaining a kid at heart, you know, kind of thing. I loved moments, you know, the baseball kind of scene at the beginning of the film, and just the way it was really emphasizing on the kind of the value of family, and you know, staying a kid. And I think he does certainly become a better person. You know, kind of towards the end of the film, once he realizes this, and it's a great little way, you know, the idea of this to kind of make him realize, you know, a protagonist. You know, and I think you know, it's a film that does emphasize, of course, this, and you know, he is a lawyer, of course, Peter Bannon, of course, you know, and he's kind of real life kind of thing here, but you know, someone who, you know, doesn't really pay too much attention to his kids at times, and he's always kind of putting his work first, you know, constantly over his family, never really leaving time for his family too much. But you know, I think I love the way, you know, the idea that how it kind of it brings this, so he kind of becomes a kid again more, and you know, kind of, yes, more of a family man, and not as, you know, kind of serious in that sense, and kind of all work, no play kind of thing. And yeah, it's a very charming way it brings it together. It's just a shame a little bit about some of the middle, but you know, Hook is a film that I like. It's not for everyone, but clearly a lot of people hate the film, but yeah, I'm kind of I do like the film definitely, and I'm not someone who loves the film, but I'm not kind of someone who really dislikes it or anything. I think it's definitely an impressive film. A very charming film, and yeah, just overall I did like the film, and my third watch now really, all the way through, but yeah, I think it's definitely grown on me a bit more, a little bit more than the other watches. But yeah, it's a film that I like. I think definitely another impressive outing, from Spielberg. This film, and it's. I'm not saying this is one of his best or anything, but yeah, thumbs up from me, kind of thing. And I would recommend it if you've not seen it. If you like family films, feel good films that kind of focus on childhood and what it kind of means to be a kid and stuff, and when you've got kind of a feel good kind of adventure. I wouldn't call it too much of an adventure because it is mainly in a couple of small locations, and stuff, and it's not an all-out kind of adventure film, but it is more of a kind of family, just fantasy film, kind of just a film that kind of wears its heart on its sleeve kind of film. That's to describe how you describe it. And very, very good John Williams score. I think it's directed, in a solid manner. Definitely impressive film, and thumbs up again to Spielberg. And yes, that's my review of Hook. Can't say much more about the film, but I definitely enjoy this film. Not for everyone, but yeah, I do personally enjoy the film, and another film, of course, to praise by Spielberg, of course. And leave your thoughts in the comments. This is one I'd be very, very interested to see, what people think of this one. A lot of people love the film, a lot of people hate it. Some people would say, yeah, it's good and stuff. That's kind of me, but yeah, be very interesting to see, and just in terms of how it compares, maybe, how it rank for you, as a viewer, among the Spielbergs, and yeah, just of course more talk about cinema as always in the comments. So yes, more Spielberg reviews to come. Over time, as we know, gradually reviewing all of his films, including his very latest ones, and just just more videos, in the futures as well, just relating to Spielberg kind of works, and maybe collaborations and stuff. But yes, as always, thanks for watching my review.